Okay. So I guess let's start. Thanks again for having. I mean, I'm very glad to have you all with us today again. Um, I will introduce myself again. So I'm Jana, the founding editor of a dance mag, and we are here to discuss what's coming next for the magazine. And we will have with us Parvathi and Anna, who are the editor, with Gabriel, who won't be able to join us today, who are the editors of the structure issue, the upcoming issue of the magazine. And Abby will be moderating the session again. And I'm looking forward to what the session will bring us this time. Thanks everyone for joining us again. So Abby, the floor is yours.
Yeah. Okay. So I just want to start by saying that I'm really excited for this issue. And I kind of want to start differently this week. I want to start with the forward that I was sent, and specifically, I want to start with. Well, I'm going to share my screen for everybody if I can. I think I have that. I can do that, right?
Yes, you can share the screen.
There we go. Got it. And I want to start with, please. There we go. Okay. I want to start with this because I am such. I had just said that before some of you got here, but I'm really interested in magazines and how magazines don't just want us to read, but how they really force us to engage. And we're not just engaging with a print medium, we're engaging with dance, which means we're engaging with our bodies, we're engaging with our minds. And I think it's so interesting that the editorial team chose to start the forward after a very long break where we haven't been engaging with a dance mag, where a dance mag kind of was just kind of gone and kind of regrouping. And now we're back, and it's almost like you have a riddle. So I really, I want to invite everybody who wasn't involved in the creation of this to see if you can recognize the patterns. There in the forward, I can also show you. Can you see this? Not to spoil too much, but can you trace at least 3 patterns in our representation above and know naming the fundamentals like the Roman alphabet or the Arabic numerals won't count? And I think it's just such an interesting and maybe kind of to wake up and to maybe engage last week. It was kind of, I don't know, not difficult, but a little quiet. And now, especially since we're a smaller group this week, I think it'd be really nice to kind of sit down and engage with this for just a minute and kind of like wake us up to what we want to talk about structures. So does anybody recognize any patterns? And I want I want somebody who has nothing to do with the process of this to maybe kind of answer.
It's the Fibonacci, but you're playing also with numbers and letters.
Mm-hmm.
Like 0, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 34, 50, 58, 9.
It took me an absurd amount of time to recognize one. I have to say, I was a little embarrassed. So one that I definitely saw was 0 plus 1 is 1, and then 1 and 2 is 3. 5 and 8 is 13, and 13 plus 21 is 34. Am I correct on that?
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other ones before I throw it to the editors to kind of elaborate on?
It's funny, Abby, that you asked this because like I wrote this section, and when I was preparing for this our meeting today, I revisited this text and I was thinking, what is the third one? And because I made it, I should remember this. And I think this brought to mind something about how at some point the brain is able to identify structure and even create structure, and another time lose, like even memories is like going in this direction of flow, and as is the possibility to grasp structure. So I won't give more but yes, there's more patterns there.
I just sent it in the chat, so because I can't see you guys if I'm sharing my screen. So yeah, so the introduction really caught my eye. And I think my first question is, coming off of touch, how did you get to structure? What's the idea? Like, what was the inspiration, I guess, for structure? You're muted, Shauna.
So, yeah. Well, the structure and the flow issue, actually, structure came to mind while I was working and finishing the touch issue, and flow as well. Like both of them came to mind in 2020, and I started thinking about them in 2020. This is why I wanted to work on them together, so I can get them out of the system because they have been there for a while. So in 2020, there was lots of chaos, which brought about structure. But also I was thinking about how certain dance forms, and okay, not only in dance forms, also in life, sometimes we get to worship structure. So structure becomes not a means to an end, but it's an object of admiration in by itself. So we find it very hard to let go of it when it does not serve us anymore. So this was how I was thinking about it. Like also the pandemic helped me a lot because the life we were leading kind of got disrupted by this event, and we found ourselves like working new structures, and I was wondering whether or not we will get rid of what doesn't serve us anymore, or we will still be attached to it moving on. Flow as well. I mean, both of them came from a dance form, but also came from the time that we are living as well. So there was a moment during the pandemic where like people were taking videos of animals on the streets in the cities, having a lot of fun actually, and where nature was having its best times, because we were locked in, we as humans. So I thought, why can't we like just go with the flow of life? Why are we disruptors? We are disruptor to the flow of life, of nature, although we are nature, but we kind of disrupt its flow. And once we are locked down, like everything flows back again marvelously without us. So this brought up the idea of flow after structure. So they kind of came one after another, and they kept on gestating together. So I thought it's a good thing to like bring them to life together, because they were like happening in my mind at the same time.
Okay. When you think of structure, and this also goes, I think, to everybody, if you're thinking of structure and you're thinking about dance yet before we get too deep into content. Like how does structure define or inform maybe your dance practice? Like what do you get from structure? What do you hope to portray from structure, or what do you hope to break away from? Which structures do you think are destructive instead of productive?
I will take the lead on this, and I think everyone has something to say about that.
Yeah.
There is a question that always comes, and I think few of us here already has discussed it before. Like structure in my mind was very much tied to the classical form, the ballet form. And it is an example actually where structure is worshipped. Like you cannot, it is worshipped. So you cannot betray the structure. You cannot go and do some, I mean, even if you dress differently in a classroom where ballet is happening, you will feel like everyone is staring at you, like you are doing a blasphemy of some sort. So there are some dance forms where structure is overbearing. But again, for me, because I came to ballet at a later stage in my life, so I wasn't a kid when I was introduced to ballet. Finding it as a very structured space gave me a sense of grounding, actually. I enjoyed it so much because it made me feel like these rules are useful. Like they are useful to my well-being as well. But I came late. So I came like I was 18. So I wasn't a kid. And they made me discover my body. These rules made me discover my body as well. And I respected very much the fact that people can't go into the class like 2 minutes late, which is something like I'm very flexible on. But having these kind of rules made me a sense of, but it also goes into the worship bit about it. So after a while, you start to get tired with this worshipping of structure. So it is helpful, but it is also a hindrance, like it weighs on you. So you need flow. I mean, you need a space where you can flow, where there is the structure, but the structure isn't overbearing, isn't putting like, isn't restricting your freedom of movement also. And also during the pandemic, I got introduced, because we were locked down, to the Qigong practice, which is a very, very, very interesting practice. And it goes outwards. So it's kind of like, you don't go into yourself when you are practicing. There is structure, but this structure is all the time you are kind of in contact with the environment, in contact with the elements. You are moving within the environment you are in. You are bringing the environment into your space. You are consciously aware that you are part of a bigger system. So this is why also flow came into being. Like in both cases, you can flow, but your flow is much more smoother and more in harmony with nature in the second example. In the first one, you need to find it. You need to find your flow in the structure. It's not as easy flowing as in the other structure. Both of them are structured. I have to say it again, but it is structured in a different way.
I was really surprised, and I'm pleasantly surprised actually to see that there was a contribution about ballet in this issue, because it's the first time that there's been something classical, if you will, and I'm really interested to read it. And kind of, it makes sense, I guess, that it would come up in this edition, in this magazine, as opposed to the other ones where it's kind of more grassroots, if you will. That's kind of been a keyword the past few weeks. Anybody else? Parvathi, Anna, Sasha, Sabrina? Please.
Anna, go ahead. You seem like ready
You,
to
yeah.
I'm half-baked, but I will try. Yeah. So when I first read the prompt about structure, the structure issue, and the question was whether I wanted to collaborate rather on structure on flow. I kind of decided for flow, but not because because I don't like structure. Quite the opposite. I actually love structure. And I wanted a challenge. Because I think like already like in the context where I'm in, I'm busy with thinking about structures. And when I thought about structures in dance, I thought it would be maybe easy to think about structures as societal structures, as a social context, as power dynamics. So this is the first thing that popped into my head actually when thinking about structure in dance, and especially about economic structures, about infrastructures, and about financial structures that that are kind of needed or have to be in place, at least how I realized later in my context, in order to make dance at all happen. So I think like what I found compelling about structure also, but I still think is structure is super interesting for dance. It's not just the structure and the choreographic kind of dimension of dance, but actually the context and the structure that needs to be in place, you know, because I had to think about like the current situation in the Berlin dance scene, and we're funding after funding, and there's like a huge you know, like of course pushback, and there is this discussions, and there is demonstrations happening in order to make the dance scene visible, and how much they're actually in need of that financial support. But at the same time, there's always the question like whether dance cannot actually also happen, and where are we actually, or I mean, it's being sometimes juxtaposed, you know, like that dance can happen in many places where this funding structure is actually not in place. And yes, but it's being used kind of an argument, you know, in order to say like, okay, we're actually having such a good, you know, privileged funded dance scene, so we shouldn't complain about the funding getting cut. And at the same time, I mean, the dance that is happening in Berlin, or contemporary dance scene especially, was born out of precarity itself. So, I mean, we know that dance can happen in kind of both ways. I think it's like just interesting to think about, or for me, interesting to think about that aspect of dance in terms of structure.
Yeah, the perspectives are limitless. It's so good. It's so good. Parvathi?
Thank you, Anna, for going back to that moment when we were discussing about who would go with which issue, because we all started with the broader themes of structure and flow. And for me, I think my choice was to go with the structure issue, because what excited me was the possibilities of the written experiments to depict structure. Because I think yes, we feel structure, we sense these structures in our system, we experience the oppressions or the freedoms of structure, or you know, the path that it gives us. But maybe what was exciting for me is how to associate this with dance, and how to show it in different ways on the as a written experiment, whether it's through language or through how it appears on the page. So yeah, we'll see how that's worked out through this issue. And with structure, I'd say that I think some of the things I wrote down here with your question was, I think in my dance practice, or in I find it something that's rich with rhythm, and that it can give the tools for a grammar of the body. It can create something very fundamental that one doesn't have to think about. But I think that's where the flaw is, because I think one, like Jana mentioned, that there can be lots of hierarchies, but that's where I think we can rethink this about structure, because like one can even flow in the hierarchies. We could really flow and recreate these hierarchies. But the question is whether we are aware of it, and whether we can be self-reflected and self-aware of how these hierarchies are in place. So whether it's flow or structure, these differences in power dynamics can exist. So I would say that the lens or the how we participate in these systems is what makes the difference. But whether it's structure or flow, they are both quite essential to our being.
Can I just jump on that also?
Yeah, please.
Parvati. I mean, that's why I actually kind of that touches upon the question also why I'm today also in this talk, although I was primarily working for flow, is because we also had we had sometimes the difficulty to actually decide what would go to structure or flow. So some of the contributions, they could have worked either way, and it's I mean, for sure it was always almost like, I think almost in every piece the question was about both, like when reflecting on structure, I think no one, or when reflecting about flow, everyone was reflecting also on structure and vice versa, which I find super interesting also to have as a conversation.
Yeah, Sabrina, you wanted to chime in?
You're on mute, Sabrina.
So it's so interesting to hear what you're saying, because when I read about the call for structure, the first thing that came to my mind was how I am always looking through the creative process to create the structure for my choreographic piece. So for me, finding, I believe that the creative process will guide me to that place where my piece has a shape. So so it's really interesting to hear you, because you're sort of talking about the structure like all around the dance world and everything, and I enjoy a lot, like either playing with structures like a maze or something for my piece, or finding that structure through the creative process. So and I was also very interested in the flow, but yeah, I sort of fall in love with how to find structures.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. We're off to a really good start this week. Wow, it's really good. I kind of want to talk about the magazine itself now. Speaking of structure, kind of going back to what we were talking about before we started in the waiting room. So what can we expect with the design of structure this time? Like, how did structure, because I was thinking back to Fuhrer and what we talked about with the jumps between like the textual aspects on the page. How are you thinking about the structure of a magazine, the structure of a piece of paper, the structure of print medium when trying to portray these stories? And also thinking about in the call for contributors, you said something about a new cycle for the magazine. And so kind of also shifting maybe the structure. And I noticed that tone shift between kind of okay, we're telling our stories. This is the experimental part of engaging dancers to put their stories on paper. And now towards kind of taking a more critical eye to approaching the writing. And I was wondering if that was conscious and if that has anything to do with structure, if that's something we might see from flow. Maybe we can talk about that next week. But yeah, I don't know. There's lots of, if we're talking about structure, there's lots of structural aspects, I guess, to also kind of explore.
Well, yeah, the design bit is interesting because I was thinking of actually changing the format of the magazine between the first cycle and the new cycle, like to make it claim its magazine format rather than to stay with the bookish look of the magazine, to make it even more flexible and more easy to handle, like as a piece of as an object. This hasn't been decided upon yet. It will become clear soon. But yes, the idea of transitioning between the first cycle and what's coming next after these two issues is at play now. Like structure and flow will be a transitioning period for the design to kind of bridge between what was and what will become. And I'm trusting the process that it will lead us to where we should be going. So the dance mag will remain a dance mag, feel and look-wise, but it will be a bit different this time as an object from the first three issues. And we'll see how this will take us. Where will this take us next?
Interesting. Is there as much of an emphasis on color as there was in the first three?
Yes, but not in the same way, probably, because we are also playing with the idea of making it full color, but also this hasn't been decided yet. So it was, dual colors previously, but this is also still in progress. So decisions haven't been made yet. Did you? I felt like you were kind of disappointed, Abby.
No. I don't think disappointed. Disappointed isn't the right word. I think surprised. I think maybe surprised because the format and the paper choices and the color choices, the design choices, I guess, in general, really emphasized indie magazine to me.
Yes.
It was very much independent. It was very much, we don't really care about your structures and your rules. And so it just kind of surprises me to make it less bookish, to make it like less maybe radical, if you will, in terms of what it wants to achieve. And so it's definitely not disappointed. I'm just interested.
Actually, I also was thinking about the same idea that because I'm now so exposed to the indie publishing world, so I see plenty of indie magazines like on my feeds everywhere. Indie publications, let's call it. Somehow they started to look the same. Like it has become kind of established. There is an established aesthetic, so it's no longer rebellious in any way. Like, yes, this belongs here. So it has its own aesthetic and language, and for me, nothing surprises me anymore. Like, this is indie and this is mainstream, but maybe we can do something else.
I was thinking back to the first edition, I guess, when we talked about kind of this idea of like the body, the magazine itself, like as a body. And that's always where my thoughts kind of like went to with the elongated form. So now I'm really curious to see the different forms of that body taking shape and playing with that structure. I think, I'm really curious. Do you know approximately when it's going to print?
No, actually, no. I had quite some challenges since we finished the editorial process. In the production side, I'm having some challenges that I'm trying to, find my way around them. So it will take a bit longer than expected. I was expecting the magazine to go out in February this month, but it won't be as soon as that. So it will take a few more months.
Okay. Then can we go to the editing process? Because this is the first time that I see everybody on the editing team and who edited what. And so I'm really curious about the editing process. How do you choose who picks what? Do you all cross-read each other's? Are there main editors on certain pieces? And what is that collaboration feeling? What is it like? Like, what is the process kind of like? And how do you think it informs, I guess, the finished product more than other publications, maybe from one editor who just kind of has the say over everything? Anyone want to go first? Yeah.
Yeah, just to like, I'm going to start off, and I'm sure, and I think it'll be great to hear from Sasha as well too, because I think Sasha heard from 3 of us at different moments, so that'd be interesting to hear. Yes, so in terms of how we were organized, is that because we had a lot of proposals and we had to come down to some selections, and we were trying to trying to also first of all understand the ways that the open call could be interpreted, and see in what ways that people had tried to interpret this, and make selections based on that. But of course, there were always discussions on, is this structure, is this flow, and that there were definitely texts that we felt more attracted to. So I think we tried to work with those texts as well, because of reasons of why we felt like, hey, this is an important story to be told. So there were different points at which we were like magnetic towards a certain text, or but also always referring to other texts. There was always a second eye or a third eye, fifth eye on every text. Yes, and also in this process, definitely I learned, I would say, about different editorial approaches. Like something that I think I'm going to really carry with me was like so far in my editorial experience, when I work with other texts, I see myself as an advocate of the writer. As an editor, I feel that, hey, I'm going to cheerlead, because I think writers need to have more say or more confidence, and feel like they are finding they're able to have the say for, like, they're able to have the space for what they want to say, and to support in reaching them in reaching that voice, or closest to that voice. And even so this is my approach so far. And what I learned from the team was also some approaches of being the editor, being an advocate for the reader. And and this was something very interesting for me to get a perspective on, and see, okay, how to accommodate all of these different approaches together. Yeah, it was fun for me.
Anna, Sasha? Sasha as the author, Anna as editor.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was very interesting also to work in a team that has so many different kind of views on how to edit a text, actually. So yeah, we all had like different, I think, styles of editing, as Parvathi, I think, already said, from which I also learned, like there is different concerns for the creativity, talking about creativity of a text, or talking about the political urgency of a text, or talking about I don't know, actually just the form of it, the dramaturgy, what is abundant, what is too short. Every one of us had like kind of a different lens on what to do, or kind of a different approach what to do with the text. And I really enjoyed that. I think it also changed a little bit like my approach with texts, as Parvathi said, like being more also as an advocate for the writer, and really try not to, because I'm rather also used to editing academic texts. So then it's like, now the idea is more also to kind of feel the voice of the author, and really be with them throughout the text, which I really love. Yeah, so this is, I think, from my perspective, but maybe Sasha can say something.
Yeah, Sasha, I'm so interested in your
was
perspective as an author working with different editors. So you can, for one sec, I have to turn the light on.
I can say that I think I didn't formulate it that way when I was working on the text, but I definitely felt all of your encouragement during the process, because it was like, I mean, I think the text transformed like quite dramatically, but my process was also that way, that I wanted to write so desperately, and then I didn't have time. So like I started to write like in the style that finally was chosen, and then I was like feeling like, okay, I'm not making it to the deadline. I'm not copying, so I will choose some like a more dry format that will like provide with the facts, and which would be safer in a sense that it will not like provide my perspective, but I will kind of like deliver the facts that I wanted to be there, and then I was like brought back by the editorial team to where it started from. So I think the time that it took, it was very interesting, because I was like in a different projects, and then at some point, like you know, you go out of the party and they're like, I need to finish the text, and then they already heard of this text, and they're like, you are doing it still, and like, what the hell? And then I was like, no, actually, I'm happy that I'm still doing it. Like, so yeah, this time that it took for me, it felt very very relevant. I think it was very helpful. I'm very slow, and it really takes me a lot of time to like to reread, to believe it, to not like doubt if it's relevant. And I, to be honest, I also feel that this encouragement that you made, it also transformed, not transformed, but it grounded my my stage voice as well, because I work in the same like way of talking on stage, and I think it helped me to be more be more persistent with it. So it's actually yeah. So I'm super thankful. Yeah.
Okay, so are we. Future readers are thankful for all of the effort.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah. And I'm super interested about other contributions. Am I the only author here, or Septem is also author? Yeah. Okay. It's gonna be a surprise.
But Parvathi, you wrote 2 pieces, right?
Yes, yeah, I wrote a piece which I think could have arguably been also in in flow or structure, but yeah, it was read by the others in the editorial team and edited by the others. Yeah, and it was written way before the open call came, so it was written just as in a state of flow actually, and then it came out in a very forceful way at the time of writing, and yeah, so then it was written. And then the other text was written thinking about the classical, but another classical, classical from another part of the world.
Yeah. I have one more editorial question, and then I do, since we do have 2 authors here, want to talk about your guys' pieces. But first, I want to know how you landed on the 3 categories, because it's kind of split into 3 sections from what I took from the contributors list. And did that happen kind of organically? Was that also democratic process, if you will, or did someone kind of see the pieces that were coming in and think of that structure? Like, how did the pieces inform the structure, I guess, of the order and the categories or the sections, or vice versa?
No, those sections came at the end,
Okay.
because I wanted to organize the issue, and I was looking for like what makes what goes with what, like what kind of structures do we have, and there are so many options to actually look at or choose from. but the choice I made was based on, I wanted to be very because I was a little bit biased, like against structure, kind of. I felt like during the process. So I'm grateful. I'm grateful that the process also taught me that I actually shouldn't be negatively biased towards structure. So I wanted to, yes, give a positive outlook on it. So the first two pieces, I felt that structure was kind of a bit overbearing, kind of exclusionary, disruptive to certain people. So I bulked them together as the starting point. But then it opens to the more organic kind of structure that comes by itself within its environment, within its like in relationship to what's happening around it. Like it's built organically. It's not forced on anyone, and it may be exclusionary, but in the text, the way it came out, it didn't feel like it was excluding anyone. Like it felt like it's just showing how it comes in within its context in an organic way. And the end, the mutable structure. I think this bit is very interesting because here you can see structure, but you can see structure that is in and by itself is able to mute itself, like mutate itself. Like, yeah, it exists and it exists for a purpose, but when the purpose, when it's not serving its purpose, it can mutate itself to keep on serving the purpose. Like it's not flexible, but it's more malleable. It's kind of, yeah, it's not fixed, it's not rigid, it's mutable. And I think, yeah, this was the best way to, for me at least, to put the pieces together. So but the big chunk came in the organic bit, I think. But yeah, it's also an interesting point of view. Like there are organic structures. Structures aren't only always imposed and forced, and they come out from their environment as well.
Yeah. In terms of content, this issue, from what I've seen, seems a lot more critical. That change of tone. Can you guys talk about that from the authorship perspective as well as from the editorial perspective? It's a discernible shift. I haven't even read it yet. Did that come from the call? Were you surprised at the kind of contributions you were getting, or did you intentionally take that step towards new tone?
That contribution we got, I think most of them were critical. I don't think we had like, no, we didn't overlook anything. I think most of them were like critical. But as I was saying to someone the other day, like when you think of when you hear structure, you start thinking. It's a very intellectual word, as by itself. Like, yeah, I mean, I will leave it to Parvathi and Anna to give their perspective on that.
And maybe just like before you guys start, also thinking in terms of flow, since they go kind of in tandem with each other. And I don't want to spoil too much about flow yet. I don't even know anything about flow yet. I haven't gotten the same documents that I got this week. But is there kind of a push and pull between more experiential, poetry, kind of soft language, if you will, that we've had like in the previous cycle, and this critical, or is it really going to be kind of more a shift towards a more critical language?
I think Anna can answer this question very well.
Yes, please.
I mean, it's interesting what you said about the experiential kind of language, because we did have the feeling in the beginning, like just as a small thing about flow, that, well, in the opposition, we felt that flow feels more something like an internal kind of state, while structure may feel like something external and more in a way like kind of not when talking about the dance, like something more distanced from yourself, or which is influencing you but maybe not necessarily created by you. That's why maybe, but this is my hypothesis here now, it's easier to be critical within structures. But I wouldn't say that, like, especially me, I'm very critical about flow as well. So you can have both. I think in the next issue you will also find a critical tone, but in a different way.
I actually disagree. If you think of your text as a critical text, maybe, but there is lots of flow in it. No, I think the flow issue, I mean, we'll get to it. Let's stick with structure for now. But no, the flow issue is different really in tone. It's not like the structure issue. And I'm saying that not because I was aware of that before, but because I was preparing these documents this week. And I was reading both of them like next to each other. And I felt, oh my God, no, the flow issue is different than the structure issue. They are not the same. I mean, they are distinctly distinct in terms of styles of writing.
Yeah.
But there is, yes, as Anna said, there is some intellectual bit to the flow, but it's more experiential than structure for sure.
Yeah. Sasha, can you actually talk about your piece, thinking about this? And then come to you, Parvathi. I have a really solid question about Sasha's piece, because when I was reading the synopsis, I was thinking about this theater company from the 60s in New York City, and they more or less got controlled because they were doing very like Brechtian pieces until they ended up exiling themselves more or less to France during the student protests of the 60s. So I'm kind of wondering, is your piece, is it more like experience, as we've seen kind of in the past issues, or is it also very critical, or is there kind of like a middle way? Like, how do you kind of position yourself in this intellectual kind of discourse that has appeared very organically now through structure?
I feel myself in a very strange position, because I very much appreciated, sympathize to what my friends keep doing, and I'm not sure I would do the same on the place. However, I don't know, and I also know that that this commitment, it's very ambiguous. Like when we talk about the mundane, like routines of running a venue, of like being like a group of independent artists, it's and like knowing where you live in. So like it's not. I mean, I talk about the how the outbreak of the war influenced that, but it didn't happen. I mean, the outbreak of the war has a date, but the accumulation of the conditions and like atmosphere, it's been a while. So like there is no like surprise for where people are living in. So it's I think it's very hard for us who are like living in the different structures to understand what's going on there inside, and like how people also perceive it and what does it mean for them. So I feel it's very difficult. So I want to talk about those activities of my colleagues as a certain feat, but like I also I'm happy that I did it, but I don't feel like I can speak from the side, because it's I actually don't know like what's going on. So like, and also when we talk, I feel that sometimes they cannot speak openly throughout medias, and like they are choosing like accurate language, and like sometimes I can register that, and like I'm still capable of like translating it to what can stand behind, but like I'm also losing this sensitivity. So I think I am super happy that I made this text, but I think there's like a gap that rises between the scenes of the diaspora in migration and the people who stayed inside. It's like it's growing, and this scares me. So I think, yeah, I'm super happy that I managed to grasp that moment, and I stay in contact as much as I can, but there is a certain process that is going on, and I don't know like how it's going to develop there, like and it's also, I think people from the regimes where there is no freedom of speech also knows that there is a certain like a system of codes, how people read each other, and like I mean, what we in a like a open and free society can see in Brechtian theater is not the same what people in the oppressed societies will see there. So it's just
No,
like
no. Definitely.
yeah. So there's like again the structure and the form, it will like be differently impacting. Let's stay there here.
Okay, I only have 3 more minutes before I have to hand back over the moderation to you, Shana. So I have one more question for Parvathi, actually, and your contributions seem really different from each other. One of them does seem very structurally critical, talking about colonialism and like national movements in India, and then kind of this taking a walk and talking about traffic with your friends, which I mean, that's a very shallow way to put it because I haven't read it yet. But I was wondering, yeah, how did those two things come together, and how? No, I'm going to save that question for next week. I'll save that question for next week. But how did those two come to be in the same issue, I guess?
Yeah, maybe I can connect it with your previous question also about this thing, about something being, about the issue being critical, like critically looking at something versus looking at it from an inward experiential way. I think we try to create quite a balance, and I think even this is what I try to do in with both these different texts. Like one is talking about now, like we are 75 years past that moment of independence, Indian independence, or 76, I don't know how many. And anyway, so that gives us some perspective on like so much water has flown under the bridge. We know more, and we are able to look at those moments in a different way, and these kind of nomenclatures of classical and not classical, or folk, and all of these like rather absurd ways of categorizing human movement. And I think it's so. I think this lens that time gives us, the distance of time gives us, was something that I employed in that text. And I think what I appreciate about Sasha's text is where it identifies the critical structures of like the urgency of this moment, and grasps it in the mundanity of everyday life, because it is in the mundanity of this everyday life in the 50s or 40s when really like people made dance happen, or made those structures, or broke something. And so it's historically so like urgent and critically like I would say these are critical structures. And so I really felt that about Sasha's text. And yes, and I think like in this other text about taking a walk, and just being casual in one's body, and then being connected to just thinking, hey, where is my movement coming from, or the ways in which we govern our body, the ways in which structures govern our bodies. And and then assuming that these are the only structures that could govern us, but losing the various other inspirations for the movement that are existing in our book. And I felt like, hey, let me just try to go into a imaginary line, like, stream of consciousness kind of direction. So yeah, it was, sometimes it's nice to mix up ways of writing, and let's see how it ages. Yeah, I'd really definitely like, someone to prove to me that no, this is a completely invalid direction of thought. And I think, yeah, we also explored that in the editorial process. So yeah, it's cool.
Okay.
Thank you, Abby.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This was fun.
Your questions were so interesting and so stimulating, I think, for all of us. If you need to leave, please don't feel, obliged to stay.
Yeah, I have to go pick up my son. I don't have much of a time crunch next week, so yeah, I'm excited to talk about flow next week. And thank you for having me again.
I'm looking forward to the flow issue as well, discussion.
Yeah. Okay, then have a nice evening, everybody.
Thank you,
Abby.
Thank
See you next week.
Bye.
And get in touch by email. So thank you for this very, I don't know, very nice discussion and get together. I'm enjoying this very much.
Me too.
Thank you too. Yeah. I'm so curious now about the issues. I cannot wait. And the friends keep asking, when it's going to be published. It's no pressure, but it's just it's very awaited.
Yes, I'm actually I need to make an announcement about the delay, so there will be a delay. It's a relaunch and it's like a launch, but then again, like rebirth. It's a rebirth, so it's a second birth. So yeah, it's having its own challenges, but it will come out and it will be glorious.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for being here today. I hope to see you next week, everyone.
Yeah.
And
thank you.
let me, if you can stay for a bit, let me stop the streaming.